Sons of Darkness. Zadok quietly pulled the heavy wooden door shut. "We're in," said Zadok as they made their way into the dark room. "Finn, shine the light over here." Phineas, or Finn as Zadok called him, was Zadok's best friend. The two met in Petra and practically grew up together. "What are we looking for?" asked Ramia. "There's no time to explain. Do you still have Father's map?" Ramia, Zadok's twin sister, reached into her brown satchel and handed the map to Zadok. At 12 years old, Ramia and Zadok were no strangers to adventure. Their father, Dr. Benjamin E. Cohen, a professor of religious studies at the Hebrew University in Jerusalem, was well known for his uncanny ability to unearth lost treasures and ancient antiquities. His office had been abandoned for nearly 3.5 years. "I think it's over here." Zadok examined the diagram. In the far corner of the room, there was a wall built of solid brick. Some of the bricks looked rough and out of place. Dr. Cohen's office was an addition to the original building, and the newer walls blended in with the 100-year-old structure. Zadok pressed on the brick wall. Ramia and Finn looked at each other and pushed as hard as they could. "Why are we doing this?" asked Finn as he rolled his eyes towards Ramia. "You'll see," said Zadok. "Keep pressing." Zadok watched a brick twist loose. "Over here. I think this is it." Finn and Ramia stared at the twisting brick. "What's happening?" Ramia asked with disbelief. The brick fell to the ground with a thud. For a brief moment, all was quiet in the room. Ramia looked into the space where the brick broke loose, and toward the back of the opening lay a cloth wrapped with a leather string. Ramia reached into the opening and grabbed the cloth. "I can't open it," Ramia said with frustration as she tried to untie the string. "Here, use this." Finn pulled out a knife from his pocket. "Shh," whispered Zadok. "Do you hear that?" "Hear what?" asked Finn. "Footsteps," said Zadok. The footsteps got closer and closer. They could see black boots underneath the crack of the door. Zadok pulled Finn and Ramia close and out of sight of the entrance. The doorknob rattled, and then it rattled some more. The door slowly opened, and a soldier appeared. He took 2 steps into the office and looked around the room. Ramia held her breath. Zadok and Finn didn't move a muscle. The soldier clicked the light switch up and down, but nothing happened. Suddenly, there was a loud commotion in the hallway. The man quickly turned his attention to the noise. Zadok, Ramia, and Finn stood still. He peered back into the room one more time. Finn thought for a moment that he must have been seen, but the soldier quickly turned around and slammed the door shut. "Ramia, give me the cloth." Zadok placed the wrapped cloth in his shirt pocket. "We need to hurry." Opening the door as quietly as he could, they maneuvered their way out of the office. "Head down the hallway and to the left," said Zadok. "There is an emergency exit that leads to the overlook." Hunched down so as not to be seen, they ran to the exit. Ramia shoved the metal door open. The 3 piled through the opening and fell on top of one another. "Watch where you're going," Zadok said with a huff. "No, watch where you're going." Ramia toppled headfirst and fell to the ground. "We all need to watch where we're going," Finn exclaimed, who was now pinned underneath the human heap. After untangling his arms and legs from the pile, Finn couldn't believe the view that was directly in front of him. "Wow! Would you look at that? You can see for miles." The overlook was the most spectacular view on Mount Nob. From a distance, you could see the old city of Jerusalem to the west, the Mount of Olives to the east, and the valley of Jehoshaphat directly below. Zadok looked over the edge of the observation area. He remembered that he and his father would have lunch outside at the overlook when visiting his father's classroom. His father told stories of the battles that took place in the valley. It was written that Jehoshaphat would one day be known as a place of judgment. He explained that terrible things were coming. In the last days, evil would reap the destruction it had caused for thousands of years. Death and blood would fill the valley. Judgment was destined to come. "Is that Abiathar?" Finn watched as a young man drudgingly walked up the path. "Look, he's limping and bleeding." Abiathar's hair was disheveled, and his pants were torn and muddy. His jacket was ripped, and the lining was tattered. "What are you doing here?" asked Zadok. "I heard you were headed to the university, and was on my way when a soldier stopped me and asked where I was going. I told him that I was trying to find my friends. He didn't believe me and threw me to the ground." Zadok wasn't sure he believed Abiathar either. Abiathar, Zadok's first cousin, had been known to pick a fight or two. Finn pulled the canteen of water that he kept from around his neck and handed it to Abiathar. "Get down. We don't want them to see us." Below, the overlook looked like a sea of evil and darkness. Troops marched in unison into the valley, while others were on horseback. Horses snorted and quickened their step. Stitched on the troop's sleeves was a round, grey patch with a green serpent. Underneath the serpent read, "The Sons of Darkness." They were eerily chanting in a strange language. The noise was loud and came from all directions. The sound in the valley resonated at a feverish pitch. From the crowd, a soldier emerged on a black horse. He was wearing a black robe, and on the upper part of his sleeve was a square patch with purple threaded writing. It read, "The General of Death." The general made his way to the front of the formation. As he passed, the troops bowed down to him and said, "Here is to our great and mighty hero. We will forever fight for you." "What is he doing?" asked Ramir. "I'm not sure, but this doesn't look good," said Finn. The general summoned all of the troops to prepare for war. The troops gathered around the general and waited for the final command to attack. A flash of lightning appeared, thunder crackled, and an evil spirit, which looked like a frog, came out of the general's mouth. The frog swirled above him and changed into a flying serpent. The serpent was at least 20 feet long, with dark green scales, and whirled above the head of the general. The Sons of Darkness had been trying to overtake the old city of Jerusalem for several years, but the fearless soldiers had fortified the city, and they were not easily moved. Today, there were too many. The Sons of Darkness outnumbered the protectors of the city. "Do you see that?" Finn pointed to the sky. Leviathan, the serpent, was flying in a symmetrical pattern over Mount Nob. "I see it, but I don't believe it." Zadok fell to the ground and covered his head. The serpent was swooping down and making horrible screeching sounds. "Stay low, he's going to attack," said Abiathar. They prepared for the worst. The serpent's teeth were sharp and rotted. There was a terrible stench that trailed him. From below, his underbelly looked to be made out of sharp, jagged scales, and his calloused skin provided a protective armor around him. The General of Death gave the order to charge. "The kingdom is mine!" Rocks crumbled, and clouds of dust hurled about. The sky rumbled, and there were flashes of light. A thick fog smothered the valley. It was daytime, but the sky was dark as night. There was no longer sun or moon, only complete darkness. The troops forged ahead, and the evil spirits led the charge along with the general. "Capture the city!" shouted the general. The city's army retreated to the southernmost point of the valley. The evil spirits and the Sons of Darkness chased the army and covered the land. Some soldiers of the city had fallen and were too weak to run. As the Sons of Darkness were about to overtake the army, there was another flash of light, but this time with a resounding trumpet. The trumpet was deafening. "It's him!" Ramir shouted and pointed toward the Mount of Olives. "It's who the scroll talked about." They all looked in disbelief. Finn was standing perfectly still. He was frozen like a statue. Zadok had never seen Finn so pale. To the east, the fog began to lift. There was a great cloud and a man riding on a beautiful white horse. The horse's mane was adorned with stunning jewels. His presence was amazingly brilliant, and his demeanor was exceedingly bright. He illuminated the entire dark sky. His eyes were like flames, and his hair was white like wool. There was a crown on his head, and in his hand was an iron rod. Behind him were thousands of heavenly warriors dressed in fine linen, mounted on beautiful white horses with flowing manes. In the front of the infantry, soldiers carried trumpets and flags. One flag read, "The Army of the King." Another one read, "Victory is mine." Behind the king were 12 troops. Each warrior held a bronze shield engraved with their name. Their swords were made of pure gold, and the filigree handles were inset with multiple jewels. 4 mighty and holy angels flanked the sides of the troops. They stood on guard and were ready to fight. The king dismounted his horse, and when his feet touched the ground, the earth began to shake. "Hold on!" Zadok tried to steady himself as the ground cracked and crumbled in the valley below him. Trees swayed back and forth, and the roots pulled away from the soil. Rocks shifted and broke away from the sides of the mountain and tumbled into the valley. With one ominous boom, the Mount of Olives split in two. The ground shifted from east to west, and a gigantic crack formed in the earth. Part of the mountain moved to the north and half to the south. This enraged the serpent. He dipped down and slithered into the city's temple in his anger. He weaved his way through the outer courts, entered the holy place, and wrapped himself around a giant lampstand. The lampstand was made of pure gold and had 7 candlesticks. Leviathan flew out of the temple and dropped the lampstand with tremendous force, almost crushing the fleeing army. Water burst forth from where it hit, and a geyser shot water over 400 feet in the air. It towered over the temple. Water filled the crack and created a raging river that flowed to the west, as far as the eye could see, and to the east, emptying into the Dead Sea. The force of the water trapped several troops of the Sons of Darkness. The waves rushed over them and drowned them in an instant. The city's soldiers escaped on dry ground. Leviathan hovered over the general. "Halt!" commanded the general, as more troops gathered and waited for the waters to subside. The Sons of Darkness had now turned their complete attention to the King of Kings and his heavenly army. In an instant, the valley had changed. Ramia, Abiathar, Finn, and Zadok stood at the overlook. They knew that things would never be the same.